Hello and welcome back once again to Movie Reviews. So, I didn't want to take the chance of my battery dying in the middle of a review and then having to leave it till another night to finish. So, I left the whole review until the next morning. As you can tell, it's sort of daylight out. It's only 2 o'clock in the afternoon right now and it's really kind of overcast. I don't know if it's getting ready to rain or storm or what. Really heavy wind. It's freezing out right now. And I live in the desert. This is wrong. Anyway, so the final movie that I saw yesterday was The Hobbit, Part 3, or The Hobbit Battle of the Five Armies, I believe it's subtitled. So, what did I think of this one? Let's just say, as far as an ending to the trilogy, it served its purpose, but did it live up to the other two? Not really. It was a decent film in its own right, but it just seemed like to be the ending of what's essentially a 6-part series now, with the Lord of the Rings series and the Hobbit series. It would have just done a bit more. I know it's based on the book and there's not a lot to do in the book. They've already stretched the book over 3 movies. But it seems like they've already taken some liberties with it. From my understanding, they could have done a little bit more. Again, I don't know how it compares to the book, so I'm just going off the movie basis here. So the opening, really, I don't know why they didn't just finish this in the previous movie, The Desolation of Smaug. So Smaug leaves the mountain, and he's destroying the village. And there's maybe a 30-minute or so sequence with him until, basically, spoilers if you don't want to know, so skip ahead. But basically, Smaug dies. The bard shoots the black arrow, kills Smaug, and that's it. There's never another mention of Smaug after that. And it's all in like the first 20, maybe 30 minutes of the film. There's no reason they couldn't have had that be the ending of The Desolation of Smaug, and then continued on from the desolation leading forward into the battle. It probably would have shaved half hour off this movie, extended the previous one by half hour, and not been that big of a deal. So you start out with this big climax, like, oh, Smaug's here, what the hell's going to happen? And then, oh, he's dead. So... Then we cut back over to where Gandalf was. I kind of understand them leaving that kind of hanging. That was fine. But, like, even that serves no purpose. He's sitting there in this cage, and then one of the orcs is going to take him out, and then other people show up to rescue him. And then it's like a 5-minute fight sequence, if that. And then it's over. So, yeah, that could have been expanded on, done more with. Again, I know it's based on the book, and that probably wasn't that big of a sequence in the book. But do something with it, Why is it over so quickly? If you're looking to pad this one book out into 3 movies, do something with it. So then the dwarves get back into the mountain, and apparently, if you're around gold that's been around a dragon for too long, you can develop dragon sickness, which I guess they briefly hinted on in the first and second movie, that Thorin's grandfather succumbed to dragon sickness. I guess I didn't really pick up on that the first time. But yeah, apparently that's a thing, so he kind of starts to have the greed of a dragon. And, even though he made the promise to the lake town that he would, there's enough gold in the mountain for everyone, he kind of turns back on that, like, no, it's all for me. So then the elves show up, and they're like, we had treasures that were stolen by Smaug too that are probably in the mountain, we'd like them returned. And normally in his right mind, Thorin probably would have gave them back to him, but because he has dragon sickness, he goes, no, everything is mine. In the meantime, he's still searching for this one stone, which Bilbo has. So then the whole kind of battle begins. At first, it's kind of a 3-way battle between the humans, the elves and the dwarves. And then the humans and the elves kind of side together to try and resolve it peacefully, but since Thorin's being difficult, they're like, well, I guess we'll have to go to battle with him. And then the expanded dwarf army shows up. So then Gandalf arrives and says, you guys are being foolish while you are here fighting yourselves. The orcs are approaching and they're going to overtake you and none of you are going to be prepared, type of thing. So there's 4 armies. I wasn't really sure where the 5th army came in. Towards the end, another branch of the orc army shows up. So I guess that's the 5th army. I wasn't really clear on that because they were still just orcs. But, I don't know. They said they came from a different realm, so it's possible that even though they were orcs, they were a different type of orcs or something, so it's considered a 5th army. I wasn't really clear on the whole 5 armies thing. So the orc battle's going on, and the dwarf army is being defeated. The elf army and human armies finally decide to team up with the dwarf army to battle the orcs. And the dwarf leader is saying, where's Thorin? We need him. And he's inside with the other remaining dwarves that are wanting to go out and fight. But Thorin's like, no, we'll stay here in our stronghold. Again, this is all part of his dragon sickness. So finally Bilbo breaks through to him, and he has kind of a breakdown, remembering all the things that everyone's been saying to him. And then he remembers back to him telling Gandalf, I'm not my grandfather. And that kind of keeps resonating in his head until it breaks the dragon sickness. And then he's like, what have I been doing? I've been foolish. Let's go out and help. So they go out and help, and at one point, the Elf King decides that enough elven blood has been spilled in defense of the dwarves, so he's kind of leaving without his jewels or anything. And it comes down to Legolas kind of confronting his father that, if this is the way you're going to be, I want no part of you. I can't go back with you to your kingdom. I just kind of have to do my own thing. The love triangle between Legolas, the girl elf, whose name I can't think of, and the one dwarf kind of continues throughout this. But it ends up sort of resolving. Not really, because although Legolas loves her, she's actually admits that she's kind of fallen for the dwarf. But her and the dwarf, due to events that happen, they can't end up being together, so she leaves with Legolas and is his companion for a while, but that's kind of the end of seeing her, except when she talks to Legolas' father one last time. But yeah, that's kind of the end of her story. She just vanishes. Obviously, she's not in the Lord of the Rings, so who knows what happened there. So at one point during the battle, prior to that though, one kind of cool scene is pretty much all through the Lord of the Rings trilogies, Legolas always had arrows, like he was constantly just shooting everything. You never really saw him do battle without his bow. At one point in this, he actually runs out of arrows. And he's like, oh crap, what do I do now? But then the cool thing is he actually draws a sword and starts fighting, which I wasn't expecting, so that was kind of cool. So then the battle's kind of wrapping up. Thorin is fighting against the main orc guy, whose name I can't remember at the moment. But then it kind of pitters out. Like they're having this big epic battle against each other, and then it just kind of has this weird, like, Looney Tunes style ending, which it just kind of threw me off. I'm like, really? That's it? It's just, you had this big battle, and then, he just kind of sidesteps and the guy is finished. So yeah, that kind of threw me off, but it does resolve to where it made me happy with it, even though I was kind of like, oh, really? But it had a turnaround that made it better. I'm not going to say what all happened, because that would be a big spoiler. But yeah, just that whole part kind of took me out of it for a minute, but it brought me back in, so that's a positive. So then, basically everything kind of wraps up, and everyone goes their separate ways, and the realization at the end is that everything that happened in this movie was completely pointless. You know, it was, yeah, the dwarves got their kingdom back, but that was it. The elves didn't really accomplish anything. They didn't get their jewels back. Lake Town was destroyed. You know, so they're all thrown about. Legolas hasn't resolved things with his father. The girl and the dwarf that were, the girl elf and the dwarf that were in love still aren't together. Gandalf doesn't really accomplish anything. The only thing that really came of it is, what was the wizard's name? Saruman? Saruman and Sauron. I always get those confused. Sauron's the eye, right? Yeah. So Saruman, once they confront Sauron, he tells Gandalf and the others, leave him to me, I'll take care of him. You know, it's going to take more power than what you guys have combined, so leave it to me. And then he just kind of fucks off, and that's the last you see of him. And that's kind of where it just leads into the ending, which has Bilbo returning to the Shire, and he was gone for so long, everyone declared him dead. So it was kind of a funny little moment, like when he shows back up, he's like, what are you guys doing? I'm still alive. And they're like, do you have any proof you're still alive? So then it jumps forward, and it starts with Bilbo, or it ends with Bilbo's 11th birthday, which is where the Lord of the Rings began. So it's kind of bringing back full circle. But yeah, towards the end, I was just kind of like, okay, so everything that just happened here served no purpose. You know, it's a story, yes, but it was a pointless story. Nothing became of anything that happened in this story. There was something else I wanted to say that I've completely forgotten about. But yeah, so that's pretty much it for The Hobbit 3. As far as a star rating on this one, it was still an enjoyable film, except for it didn't live up to being the final in the trilogy of what the other two were. So overall, I'd give it, I'm going to call it a 3. Like I said, it's still a solid movie in its own right, but, you know, just the way it carries everything, it's more or less just a middle-of-the-road movie. It's something to watch if you're a completionist and you want to complete the trilogy, then check it out. Otherwise, as a standalone piece, it really serves no purpose. It's just it's essentially a 2-hour movie that they expanded to 2.5 because they cut the dragon fight off of the end of the previous one and stuck it on the beginning of this one to pad out the runtime. Really, they should have just left it, hour and a half, 2-hour movie, and put a little bit more effort into what was left of the story and expanded it a little bit to bridge into the Lord of the Rings, so it kind of had more tie up loose ends, and it probably would have been a little bit better. It probably still would have dragged a lot, but it would have been better. So yeah, I'm going to say a 3, just middle of the road. So anyway, that's it for this episode. Do got at least 2 more movies I'm going to try and see before the end of the year, which is only like 2 or 3 days left. So I'll do what I can to get them out. I have started working on my best and worst list, but I kind of want to wrap everything up before I solidify that list in case something jumps out and wants to be added to it. But yeah, so that's it for this episode. As always, thanks for watching, and we'll see you on the next episode of Movie Reviews.